Welcome back to the bridge. Work on the sessions module continues apace. We have a list parser for addressing lists of sessions. So you can list the sessions and it gives you a set of numbers, and then you can refer to the sessions by those shorthands rather than having to type out entire titles. We have refactored the HelmDB database so that all of the functionality is in one module, and I can include it in Valiant, which is where we keep the command line sessions parsing stuff. So there has been a lot of preparatory work to get the update working so that all of my passing sessions actually pass again, because again, the database representation changed out in the middle of it. And this is something that, man, we really don't want to do very often. Any persistent stateful stuff needs to be planned out very carefully and changed seldom. Work on Orb. The knit and weave now both use the scroll module, which is a substantial improvement. There is a bug that's probably in scroll itself. I haven't quite tracked it down, but occasionally something gets put in and then you find that line after where it's supposed to be. So probably something in how partials are being handled under some circumstances. Partials, by which I mean a line or something which is inserted into a line without a new line being attached to it. This doesn't affect the knit, only the weave, which is good, because if lines start randomly rearranging inside of source code, things really don't work. Whereas right now we can afford the occasional ugly markdown, especially since the markdown, it's going to be probably a durable placeholder, but it is just a placeholder. The preferred weave form is, of course, HTML, which we will get to. So the next major thing I am going to be working on, I mentioned writing a TOML parser and being very excited about using TOML instead of weird custom orb stuff that looks a little too much like YAML for comfort for configuration. I'm going to be reinventing the world again. It's just something that, I do. It wouldn't be Bridge if it didn't involve constantly rewriting and tweaking things that maybe don't need it, but don't satisfy my peculiar sense of aesthetics. I started a project a couple of months ago called LON, for Lazy Object Notation. And the motivating case there is I edit JSON by hand from time to time, like everybody, and it constantly annoys me that there are mistakes like missing commas and trailing commas and so on and so forth. JSON is a acceptable interchange format, and even if it wasn't, we're stuck with it. But it is pointlessly annoying to write by hand. So the idea is to write at the time, lazy object notation parser, and that would be able to take in JSON that's broken JSON and produce fixed JSON, but also allow me to work with a lazy version of the object notation inside of my own projects, like win-win, right? So TOML, I recently did something a little bit clever on Hacker News, and I highly recommend this. There was a discussion of YAML and its shortcomings, which comes up once a week or so, and I popped in and I said, I like TOML a lot. I use TOML and it's great. There are no reasons not to use TOML, and if anybody has any, please let me know. This is, of course, bait. And indeed, a bunch of people popped in and they're like, TOML has the following shortcomings, which I have discovered the hard way. And, they were right about a lot of those things. So I got to thinking, well, how would you fix TOML so that it doesn't have those shortcomings? Because using YAML doesn't fix TOML. TOML has significant advantages over YAML. So how do you get the best of both worlds? So lazy object notation is now a collection of two formats. There's LSON, lazy serializing of object notation, or lazy simple object notation, Lua, JSON, which was the original LON. And then there's LOML, lazy, obvious, minimalist language, lazy object markup language, you know. And I'm still deciding what all I'm going to put in there, but it's intended to be less visually noisy than TOML and less insistent on certain kinds of syntax, in particular not requiring you to quote strings, since it's already line-based and there's no actual reason to require strings to look like something that the C language would understand, or JavaScript really. I mean, they have the JSON nature in their strings. So yeah, that's going to be the next thing. These things always take a while, and I'm running out of opportunities to add large subsystems that I didn't originally contemplate to the bridge before release, but I'm not completely out of slack, and I think this one is going to be really nice. The idea with both of these is that they can be subsetted back into the original dialect. So they can be used. I can set up a watcher using UV that will look for changes to any files with like a JSON extension, and then clean them up and put them back, so that I can, when I'm working on JSON, I can just write in LON and not have to think about all of these stupid things that don't matter, and just kind of get JSON back every time I hit save. And similarly, but maybe less usefully, with TOML, because with TOML, one of the big things that I need to fix is that once you pop out of the top level object, so you go key value, key value, key value, key value, and then you use table notation and you say key, and from that point forward, every subtable, you have a separation between primitives and short form tables, and then subform tables. And this keeps TOML from being useful for really long, branchy maps of maps. Really long, branchy maps of maps are themselves kind of a mistake. I mean, that's what makes YAML terrible. But it's a mistake that developers should have the right to make. And so making TOML a little bit more ergonomic for those sorts of things is useful. And being able to pop back to the top level whenever you want to is useful. But that does mean that if you're going to rewrite LOML as TOML, you have to move some stuff around. So unlike JSON, where the changes are all going to be local, with TOML you might write a bunch of stuff in LOML and then retranslate it to TOML, and then things jump around and you're like, where are my keys? Which is fine if that's what you want. It's certainly easy enough to add the functionality, but I think of that part as being more of an export format sort of thing. So yeah, we'll see where it's gonna go.